It is the year 1337. The gods of old Europe have lost, and the soldiers of Christ have won the war for faith. In the west, the Catholics have burned down the sacred groves of the druids, and the Germanic pagans are on their last retreat. In the east, the Orthodox have closed the Neoplatonist academies in Greece and are forcing the Uralic and Slavic pagans to convert at the force of arms. And in the midst of Christian Europe, a single nation remains adamant in her old faith: the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. The story that we're going to tell today is the story of how this tiny nation, stuck between the Catholic West and the Orthodox East, and harassed by the Teutonic Crusaders, has finally managed to turn the tide and bring the fight west to the Catholics. It is the story of how pagan Europe has escaped destruction and instead will rise to ever greater heights. Without further ado, welcome to the War Room. And just to give you a sneak peek of what we're going to accomplish today, it is the year 1357, the Teutonic Order has been utterly destroyed, all of their previous vassals are now our vassals, and the Great Lithuanian Empire stretches from Rzhev in the east all the way to Stolp and the borders of the Holy Roman Empire in the west, and of course, we remain steadfast in our old ways. So keep watching to learn about how we got to this point in the game, and if you do end up finding this video helpful or entertaining, definitely consider subscribing to the channel so you get notified when new episodes release. And with that, let us go back to the year 1337. So here is the starting situation. We begin the game at war against the Teutonic Order and their vassal swarm, which is small but still meaningful, versus our own vassal swarm, which as you can see has a lot more numerous armies. But of course, the Teutons come prepared with a lot of Crusader knights, so it's a classical quality versus quantity matchup, and unfortunately for us, we are on the quantity side. And if you know anything about how battles go in EU5, you will know that being on the quantity side is usually a bad thing, because these Crusader knights, if given the chance, will literally shred our levies to pieces. But luckily for us, we can adapt a tactic which the Russians successfully used against the Teutons, and we can just wait for the Teutons to come to us, where we will simply annihilate them. But right at the start of the game, we are not going to actually use our levies, instead we're going to do something very different. First, we're going to go to our government tab, and we're going to grant the common militias privilege to our commoners, and then we're going to go to our cultures tab and accept the Samogitian culture. They're already accepted at this point, and it only costs us 0.15 cultural capacity to actually accept them, but by accepting them we're going to get cores on the entire western portion of our country. And then we're going to come back to our armies tab, and we are going to disband all of our levies. Now I know what you're thinking, I have not gone mad, because by disbanding our levies you're going to see something very beautiful. We can re-raise them in higher numbers. Because Lithuania does not begin with the common militias privilege, by granting this to our commoners it increases our peasants' levy size by 20%, and the moment that you disband your levies, that size increase gets applied to all of them, so now we can just raise additional men without any cost for us, except for the 5 legitimacy that we had to spend to give this privilege, of course. And I'm also going to improve cultural opinion with the Principality of Vitebsk, so that the Polatskian culture increases their opinion of us. And this is not going to have any immediate effects, except our culture's capacity will be slightly less over the cap, and then we're going to do something else. We're going to go to our possible religious aspect, and here I usually choose worship the creator deity as our patron god, but there are other options as well. The stability investment cost could be nice. 1% discipline is probably not worth it, but if this was like 5%, this would definitely be worth it. Population growth could be nice. Character life expectancy and maximum war geo size does sound nice, but it's only 5%, so usually monthly prosperity is the road to go here. And do keep in mind that as a generic pagan religion, the Romover religion gives you access to every single one of these bonuses, so not only are we getting the 0.05% from this patron god, we're also getting the 0.10% default monthly prosperity from the creator deity, along with the 1% discipline, along with the population growth, along with all of these other bonuses. So that's a lot of bonuses, but none of them are particularly useful. It's just a little bit here, a little bit there, that kind of stuff. And then we have some laws that we have to get through. I'm going to give navy audits and allow slave religion, otherwise you can't actually keep slaves. Court language usually makes sense, additional cultural influence is always good to have. And finally, anti-piracy, because why not? And then we are back to our estate setup, and if you look at the crown estate, you will realize that we begin the game with a government reform, and if you look at our cabinet, you will realize that we have only one cabinet slot, because patrimonialism is the worst government reform that you can have in the game, or maybe one of the worst. Minus 10% tax efficiency, minus 10% to all estate satisfaction equilibrium, and one cabinet seat less than any other country. This is so bad, but it only costs you 20 stability to change. And that's exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to change into agricultural cultivation, and bye-bye patrimonialism, and in one day we're going to get an additional cabinet seat. If you want, you can also add another government reform here, because we begin with 2 government reform slots. I'm not going to use the second slot, I'm going to wait until 1342, so we get new reforms with the Age of Renaissance. I'm also going to grant, let's say, the treasury rights, and probably it's a good idea to grant urban development grants as well. And that should be plenty for the initial estate setup. Of course, we're going to add more stuff here, and before the war is over, you definitely want to add expansionist zealotry, so you get war score versus other religion efficiency. In fact, I think I'm going to grant that right now, and then we should probably grant something to the nobility, the Bayorai, as well, and elite council is usually a good idea in the early game. Finally, for our rivals, of course we're going to pick the Teutonic Order, and the second rival doesn't matter all that much. I think in this case I'm going for Smolensk, and we'll see whether we expand any further into the east. It all depends on how exactly the Golden Horde implodes. So we're going to wait for exactly one day, and on the 2nd of April we get a second cabinet seat. Of course, I'm going to fill both of these seats immediately, which isn't all that difficult because we get a lot of Gediminitis dynasty members, and usually this guy seems to have nice stats. I guess we can get this guy as well, but ideally you want to have someone young with decent stats so that you can put them in the cabinet and then make them head of cabinet for the additional crown power boost, which I'm going to do right away. It does cost us another 5 legitimacy, but we have 66, which is more than enough in the early game, and over time, once our budget has stabilized, of course we're going to buy our legitimacy back up. So minting and the taxes are going to be automated. I'll put 30% to the satisfaction equilibrium for these 3 estates, and 50% for our clergy, and over here I think I'm going to close down the temples, because as of patch 1.2 they aren't all that useful. And usually you want to keep the granaries. The marketplaces, it kinda depends on how much you're getting from trade. I usually give it 2 or 3 months, and then if we're getting enough trade income, I keep them open. Otherwise, you might want to keep them closed as well. And finally, this is terribly important, you want to go to manage subjects, and you want to add a passive stance for all of your subjects. Now ideally, we would like them to be supportive, but unfortunately for us, the AI does not understand how being supportive works, so what they would do is they would merge up their stacks with other vassals, and then they would try and attack the Teutons, and then they would get destroyed, which obviously we do not want because it would mean minus 50% war score for us, so we're just going to tell them to stay behind and stick around in their own homelands. I'll also build a tailor's guild in Vilnius because I believe that the Riga market does not start with any fine cloth production, and usually it tends to be a moneymaker in the early game. You can also grab a couple more RGOs if you want and invest your money in other ways, but I guess we can get maybe these 3, okay, maybe these 2, not the third one, because that would cost us too much. In fact, all of these cost us too much because lumber prices are pretty steep, so it probably makes more sense to build up an lumber RGO at first, and then once the lumber prices have collapsed a little, then you might want to go back and build up the other RGOs. And with all of that being said, we can finally start the clock, and as soon as our levies have finished gathering, we're going to take all of them north to first deal with the northern Teutonic vassals. I'm not going to put our Grand Duke at the head of this army because he is 62 years old after all, so instead let's go for Kestutis Gediminas, and we will use this army to destroy the Regan armies first, and then we will wait for the Teutons to come to us. Well, that is one Regan stack down, and let's see if we can take down these two as well. Also with the first monthly tick, we do get cores on the western parts of our country, because of course we accepted the Samogitian culture, and over time the control in these areas is going to rise, but for now we have essentially zero control in the entire locations. That is another Regan stack down, so now that the other vassals have crossed the border, we will probably try to go there and destroy them, but what on earth are our vassals doing? You were supposed to stay back in your own lands, why are you here? I mean, they did manage to destroy those 500 knights, but they're going to get wiped themselves as soon as the Teutons arrive. Also, because your vassals have all been your vassals for 10 years or more, you can start the game by enforcing culture and religion, and the religion enforcement you definitely need to do because you are the last pagan stronghold in all of Europe, and for some reason Paradox decided not to model probably hundreds of thousands of Slavic pagans that are still out there kicking in the countryside. So we're going to start by enforcing religion, let's say on Vitebsk, because I believe they are the largest vassal that we have, and we can also enforce culture on maybe the second largest vassal that we have, which I believe is Polotsk. And just as I had predicted, the Teutons are here, they are killing our vassals, and our vassals just walk into that trap. This is so bad. The AI literally is brain dead in this game. So we managed to destroy the northern armies that belonged to Livonia before they could merge with the western armies of the Teutons, so that's phase 1 of the plan complete. And as you can see, the Teutons are dying because of the death deity god that we have in our pantheon. Yes, you get 1% hostile attrition right from the start of the game. So as long as we just let them, rummage around the countryside and not engage them, soon enough they're just going to die, and they will also start starving as soon as they try to siege down any fortress here, because of course there is no way that they can supply their men deep in Lithuanian territory. Since we're a couple of months into the game, our budget has also balanced itself out, so I'm going to increase our cost of the court so that it is evenly balanced, and we might want to deal with the diplomatic spending as well. Let's see, I think having 1.50 diplomats or so stored is probably going to be more than enough. The main use for the diplomats in this part of the game will be to request food access from Poland, because we do begin the game allied to them, and eventually once we start sieging down Teutonic lands, having food from Poland is definitely going to be a lifesaver. And then we're just going to play hide and seek with the Teutons. It doesn't even matter, we do have some minus 10% war score from battles, but we're also getting a ticking war score because the war goal here is to take Vilnius. This is a crusade, so as long as we prevent them from taking our capital, we will get up to 25% ticking war score. And this is how you can actually defeat the Teutons. Because they're receiving a lot of attrition and because they're running around your territory, eventually their morale will collapse, and at that point, as long as you meet them on favorable terms, you will win the battle and they will lose a lot of men. And then by doing this a couple more times, you can simply stack wipe them while they're low on morale, and at that point the war is as good as won, because as you can see, all of their regulars are dead, all of their levies are dead, and we even have a plus 16% from the battles that we won. At this point I'm just going to divide up our forces, and first we will use carpet sieging to take back our lands, and then we're going to occupy some of the border provinces which are not guarded, and eventually we will attempt to take the city of Riga, and also in the west the location of Marienburg, which is the Teutonic capital. We can also put our vassals to siege raider stance now, and they will start conducting offensive operations for us, which is really nice because the moment that we start sieging down some of these forts, we are going to start starving to death, and it's much better for our vassals' armies to starve to death than for our own forces. And I'm also going to request food access from Poland, which will allow us to siege down these fortresses to the west of the Teutons' lands, and we will be able to draw the Polish food stocks. And of course, the Teutons are begging us for peace. You're begging us for peace? After taking all of our lands, after converting our brethren at the tip of a sword? No, you're not going to get peace. You are going to restore all of these Romuvan lands to the great Romuvan nation, and only then will we consider letting you go, you dastardly Crusaders. I'm also going to start sieging Riga. Riga is one of the most important sieges that you can get in this war, mainly because it's a city, and in fact I believe it's the only city in the Baltic area. Oh, there's also Danzig, but it's all the way out here in Danzig. So taking it in the first war will allow you to place a local governor here, and by that you will actually be able to get acceptable amounts of control in your northern lands. Also, because Riga sits at the confluence of quite a few river systems, that means we will actually get decent proximity in all of these lands that we will end up taking from the Teutonic vassals. And Poland does have a nasty tendency to just cancel your food access without any reason, so when that happens, just go back to diplomacy and get it back from them. And for that reason, it's usually a good idea to keep your diplomatic spending up at least this level, so you're getting 0.25 diplomats a month, and assuming that Poland does not break your food access more often than every 4 months, you should be alright. It's also time for our first parliament, or should I say Seimas. I think that's basically a loanword from the Polish Sejm, which does make a lot of sense. And I guess for this one, we are going to go with promote state religion, because trust me, that is definitely going to be needed. After all, we have to convert all of these folks to the glorious Romuvan religion, so I'll try and get that one. And it's probably going to cost us a lot of agendas to actually get this through. So first we're going to grant manorial courts to the nobility for the additional 5% max tax. And I think we can give them even more privileges than this. Noble navy is nice because additional naval push is always good. And after that, I think the final privilege is going to be noble patronage of the arts, which gives us a bit of an innovative push. And with that we have 77% satisfaction on the nobility, so we can get maybe 2 or 3 agendas with them through, and then we can get additional taxes, a law change, and still manage to pass promote state religion. And the law change of course is going to be favoring the elites for even more maximum tax on the nobility, because in the early game the nobility are going to be your richest estate. In this case we are getting 2.12 ducats from them, even though we can only tax them at 19%. Compare that to the peasantry, whom we are taxing at 47%, and they're not giving us even double that amount. So it's a good idea to be able to tax your nobility to the maximum in the early game, and I'm going to grant a tax exemption to the clergy, so that's going to get us to 57%, and we will even be able to pass this issue. Slowly but surely we are winning the sieges. The siege of Dunaburg is complete, and hopefully Riga will fall soon, allowing us to reroute these nearly 2000 men to the western frontier. Thanks to the Polish support, we have also managed to capture the town of Torn, and now I'm going to move north with this stack. We're just sieging down these very quietly, and it's not a major part of our exercises. The major part is in the north, and Riga is definitely the most important siege here that we need to win at all costs. Also, the Teutons did raise their levies again, but they got destroyed very quickly, so now we're going to probably siege down another one of their forts. And this was totally unexpected because I did play this once, and the Teutons did not unconditionally surrender, but apparently here they did. So now we're going to take a lot of lands from them. Specifically, we want to take all of Eastern Prussia, because if we don't, they're just going to convert all of these Romovan people here, and that is bad because Romovan is already such an endangered religion, and we definitely want to take this area as well. And also, as I've mentioned before, Riga. Riga is really important. So the end result is going to look something like this. Pardon the border gore. We're going to get all locations which contain Romovan minorities or even majorities in the north as well, and also Riga. And I'm just taking Torn as basically war reparations. Most likely we're going to sell it to Poland for a lot of money. And I'm going to send this piece. Although before that, let's make sure that this does not antagonize anyone too much. And as you can see, it's just the Teutons plus their vassals, plus a couple random countries basically. Even Poland is very much on the fence about it, and it should be quite alright for them. So let us send a peace deal, and that's going to be the end of our first Great War to reclaim the Baltics. And just look at that, we truly are a Grand Duchy now, aren't we? So the war is won, and that means we can finally consider the unintegrated provinces that we start the game with, and also the new unintegrated areas that we've taken from the Teutons in this war. So the good thing about these areas is they're majority Romovan and also majority Baltic cultures, such as the Prutenians and also the Sudovians. These are all Baltic tribes, and it costs us very little to actually accept them and add them as accepted cultures. But we're not actually going to do that, because despite the fact that these cultures do not have any cultural tradition, so we would have some integration benefits when integrating their lands, it would still take us decades or even a century to integrate all of the lands that we have taken from the Teutons. And I'm not even going to consider actually converting all of the populace back to Romovan. So instead I'm going to create a few vassals, especially around Eastern Prussia, and they will begin with majority Romovan religion and majority Baltic culture. So over time they're just going to assimilate the Prussians to their culture and their religion, and then we can just come back in, let's say, 50-100 years and annex them, thus completing the integration process for our country. So we'll set up, let's say, one vassal over here. Let's make it a fiefdom. So we got Masuria, and maybe one more vassal over here. Make sure that it's Romovan majority. Yes, it is. And then I'm probably going to feed the western provinces to these two vassals. And I'm also going to hand out some of our outlying regions to our eastern vassals, because of course we have literally zero control over these areas, and we can't get any sort of control either, despite having some river networks in the area. So it's probably a better idea to have vassals administer these lands rather than administering them directly ourselves. And finally, I'm going to sell the location of Torun to Poland, and they will pay us a significant sum for it, which is going to be a lovely addition to our economy. And the reason why we sold this instead of keeping it ourselves is of course demography. This is almost entirely Greater Polish and Prussian, and 100% Catholic, so it would have been a drag on our economy and it would create rebels, and at the same time, it is a Polish core, so it would also have created some issues between us and Poland. And finally, I'm going to go ahead and accept the Sudovian culture, which will give us a few more cores to the southwest of our country. And over time, we want to accept all of these Baltic cultures because they have kindred opinion of us, so it costs us basically nothing to accept them, and over time we will be able to expand it throughout the Baltics through the force of using these accepted cultures. In fact, since we have some prestige to spare, I'll even accept the Curonian culture, which will give us cores on all of Curonia once we're done integrating the area. And as soon as we have prestige to spare, Latvian and Prutenian will also be added as accepted cultures. And finally, I'm going to build up a few libraries in our core lands in order to increase our cultural influence. Even though the actual contribution here is almost meaningless, the more cultural influence that we have, the easier the process of integrating the lands that we have taken for ourselves is going to be. Also, having a library in our capital will increase institution growth, which will definitely come in handy when in 2 years the Age of Renaissance begins and we will have to start embracing those institutions. I'm also going to destroy some of the castles in our country. We probably need one in Riga and one in our homeland, but other than that, the rest we do not have much use for, especially since our western vassals are going to have a lot of castles of their own. And then I'm going to transfer some of our eastern vassals to Vitebsk, and maybe some of the southern vassals will be consolidated as well, mainly in order to reduce the diplomatic capacity that we're using. And thus begins our 15-year-long period of peace, during which we will try to develop Lithuania and integrate our new conquests. Building up the libraries has actually created some demand for books, so of course we're going to build up a few scriptoriums in the Riga market, and this is basically going to be our early game economic growth engine. We will build libraries and later on universities, and then we will build the scriptoriums to provide books for those, and then we will build paper makers guilds to provide the paper for the scriptoriums. We also get this event an heir for Volhynia, but unfortunately it is not a very well thought out event, because this gives us a claim throne CB against Volhynia, but the problem being, the CB only works for our current ruler Grand Duke Gediminas, and unfortunately he's going to die very soon, which will make the CB evaporate. Now you might be thinking we can just declare war on Volhynia before that happens, but of course they are still a tributary of the Golden Horde, so you have to wait until they declare an independence war against the Golden Horde before you declare on Volhynia, otherwise we will have to fight the entire Horde as well. And as expected, we have a new Grand Duke, and upon his ascendance to the throne, we actually lost the claim throne CB on Volhynia, which is rather unfortunate. I guess the optimal way of doing this is probably to delay the end of the Teutonic War until your first ruler dies, so the claim throne CB applies to your second ruler, and then you will be able to use it to get a claim on Volhynia by the time that the Golden Horde explodes. In any case, the Age of Renaissance is upon us, and of course we're going to go with the administrative focus. The additional max literacy bonus is very nice, and the Deus Vult means that we will get the Religious War CB on literally the entire world, because of course we are the last remaining European pagan. Being in the Age of Renaissance means we can institute another government reform, and of course I'm going for the local army organization, which is essentially a 20% additional levies buff. And we get this very unique event, vacillation between East and West, because of course as Lithuania, we are the last great bastion of paganism, and that means that both the Catholic West and the Orthodox East are trying to convert us. In this case, this is about our relations with the Catholic West, and we can pretend to play along. We can say that we're genuinely going to convert, in which case the Pope will actually expect us to convert, but I'm going to say that the Grand Duchy of Lithuania will remain Romovan, which will make all neighbor Catholic countries lose 100 opinion of us, and they may declare war on us, but there are no neighboring Catholic countries. If we actually look over here, we do not have a border with Poland, we do not have a direct border with the Teutonic Order, we only have borders with their vassals. So as far as I know, this actually does not do anything. And let's check if it actually reduces the opinion of Poland. There we go, it did not reduce the opinion of Poland, so as long as you do not have a direct land border with any of your western neighbors, as long as you have released, let's say, Masuria as a vassal, for example, you're good to go for this event, and you can remain Romovan without any problems. Since it's the Age of Renaissance, all of these small Italian states are going to start embracing their institutions soon, so I'm going to improve opinion with Genoa and also probably with Venice. Venice might make sense, and eventually when we get to 100 opinion with them, or even positive opinion with them, this will allow us to offer them fleet-basing rights, which in turn will spread some of the Renaissance institutions to our capital. Now that our legitimacy is back up to 95, I've granted the building roads rights to the burghers, and this will allow them to build roads automatically, increasing the size of your road network and thus your proximity and control without you having to invest anything yourself. Well, as expected, we got a small rebellion in our vassal Masuria, but it shouldn't be too much of a problem. These guys only have 270 men, and I'm just going to raise my levies to destroy them. So of course the revolt was put down, and I presume we will have another revolt of our own this time, but it will probably take a while, and I don't expect them to rise at any time within the next 5 years or so. Now that we have a bit of money stored, I think building a royal garden might be a good idea, so for that we will have to import just a tiny bit of tin and marble into our market, and once we have done that, we will be able to build this, get an additional 0.20 monthly diplomats, which will either allow us to reduce our diplomatic spending or allow us to get more diplomats out there, especially in Italy, improving opinion with the Italian states so we get access to those institutions faster. So let's import some tin from Krakow, and also we are going to import marble from, let's see, where can we get? Stockholm sounds nice. Marble is quite heavy to trade, so it'll probably be a while before we get marble in the Riga market, and then we can build the royal garden. And it is time for our next Seimas. Let's hold it in Trakai, and let's say we're going for maybe Fund Artisan Guild sounds nice. Increased naval infrastructure sounds nice. I think I'll go for this one. The additional production efficiency and local access to raw materials is generally a good thing. It will be lovely for the economy. And we can even get additional innovative push, and that's a +5 innovative push by the way, from the parliament agenda, so I'm definitely loving this parliament. And I think here we're going to change the feudal de jure laws to by blood for the additional speed of integration. By tradition literally does nothing because it only increases your cultural tradition, which is basically useless, and the additional speed of integration will definitely come in handy while we're integrating the northern provinces. And we can even request additional taxes after that, and then the innovative push is going to come in handy. So with the additional taxes, we're bringing in 11 ducats a month, and of course we're going to spend all of that first upgrading our RGOs, especially the wool in Kaunas and Punia is very lucrative for us, and then once the RGOs are complete, we're probably going to build up a few more urban buildings. But first, the royal garden of course, and I think there's a case to be made here for building the royal court as well. The additional crown power and cabinet efficiency are generally going to be nice, but it will consume a lot of very important goods, and the maintenance cost is probably going to be prohibitive, at least in the early game. It is June 1347, and that means we can enforce religion and culture again. For the religion, I guess we're going to enforce it on Novogrudok first, and because we have granted them a couple vassals of their own, hopefully over time they will also enforce religion on their own vassals. And I'm going to enforce culture on the Principality of Vitebsk, which we have already enforced religion on, so now they are Romova and Augstaitian, and that means they're going to spread both our glorious Lithuanian culture and our one true Romovan faith in their lands, and also hopefully they will also enforce culture and religion on their own vassal of Toropets, and I think we will eventually grant them the Principality of Rizhev as well. Also, another rebellion in the west. Again, we don't really care, they're just going to die and be put down. The Black Death has spread to our country, and what can we do? Of course we can do a lot of things. We can expel the sick, which allows us to build the pest house, but more importantly moves us 0.50 per month towards communalism, so of course we want the communalism push here. We probably won't even build any pest houses, and the segregate the infected is another good option here, for it allows you to get an additional 0.15% disease resistance. But I think the additional communalism push from expel the sick is well worth it, because we definitely have some additional privileges that we want to revoke, especially the fortification licenses from the nobility, so I'll go for that. And I think we're not going to move our court into hiding just yet, because we have a lot of Gediminitis and we do not necessarily need to preserve our ruler or to prevent any of our crown members from dying. But while we got this event, which is the best event that you can get in the Black Death situation, so that's 12 free stability, and I think in that case we might as well move the court into hiding, because we definitely have the stability to spare right now. Alas, despite moving the court into hiding, our Grand Duke died from the bubonic plague, and we have a new Grand Duke, which for some reason resets the move court into hiding action. So wait, what? Okay, that's really interesting. So did the Black Death just hit us and then disappear, because that's what it looks like? So we'll have to do all of this again. Oh, this is so bad. And goodness gracious me, we have another Grand Duke, the third in 3 years, His late grace died from disease in Vilnius, so now we have this guy, Constantinas Gediminitis, although it literally makes no sense that we are receiving Christian names as Pagan Lithuania. This is literally unplayable. Paradox should just cut off all the Lithuanian content. They should make Lithuania playable, unplayable until they give us proper pagan Lithuanian names. An unfortunate side effect of being the only remaining Romuvan country is we do not have any potential royal marriage prospects, nor do we have any nobles that we can marry, so all that we can do is marrying additional lowborns, which costs us 10 legitimacy each time we do it. Oh, by the gods, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? We lost a 4th Grand Duke in the span of 2 years. That literally makes no sense. So now we have a subject regency and we don't actually have an heir. We have literally run out of potential heirs. The dynasty has died out in its main branch, so I have no idea what's going to happen now. Is this it? Are we stuck in a permanent subject regency? Because if that's the case, this just sucks. I'll try to figure something out here. In the meantime, time for our new Semas. And let's go for Institute Canonical Law here, which will give us, I believe, 12 stability over the next 10 years, and we could definitely use additional stability. We have a lot of things going on right now, so first of all, the Black Death is almost over. We lost a lot of people, almost half of our country, and I think I'm going to sponsor mass forgiveness, so we get some additional stability. Next up, we have the Ruthenian Laws in Lithuania event. Now this is actually a fun little event, a bit of flavor unique to Lithuania that if you choose this option gives you the integrated Ruthenian laws privilege, but it's 5% cabinet efficiency for 50% nobility estate power, so it's probably not a very good idea to grant it right now. On the other hand, we can give 7 stability and some pop satisfaction to our majority population, but I think I would still like to keep this as an option later on, so I'll choose this option instead. And finally, the Republic of Riga has broken free. They're backing by Polotsk, Slutsk and Vitebsk, so I guess we will have to fight against them. And assuming we manage to destroy some of these eastern armies, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. We should easily be able to put down this revolt. Also, I can just call in Poland to assist us as well. Riga fell because I guess they could not actually garrison this. They could not maintain the city walls, so that is all fine and well, and that means Riga is going to be fully annexed, thus returning both the city and our rebellious vassals back to our direct control. Well, there we go, the Renaissance is already spreading to Vilnius, thanks to the fleet basing rights that we gave to some of the Italian miners, and I'm fairly confident that as soon as we got Genoa and Venice on board, all of the institutions will start spreading to us. We also got the diplomacy with Russia event. If the other one was about our relations with the Catholic West, of course this is about our relations with the Orthodox East. And we can say diplomacy to avoid war, which gives us a decent bit of mutual opinion with some of the Russian states, or we can just say surely a waste of coin, but ironically enough this actually costs more than the first two options because it makes you lose legitimacy for some reason, whereas I think that you should probably gain legitimacy because you show that you're not dependent on Russian aid or anything like that. So again, it's just a paradox math as usual. I'll just choose this option and I'll make sure that we are earning enough money so we do not take an extra loan here. Also, we have improved opinion just enough with Genoa and Venice that we can offer them fleet basing rights, and that's going to start spreading the Renaissance institutions very soon as Genoa and Venice actually manage to embrace them. And there we go, Venice for example has embraced banking, so we will get some spread towards banking along with Renaissance at the moment that we give them a fleet basing rights. And finally, our never-ending regency is at an end because Prince Jurgis Gediminetis is going to become our new ruler. I'm not complaining, he has some amazing stats, he's 21 years old, this is definitely a good idea. And we have a new Grand Duke, long live Prince Jurgis. Another Lithuanian flavor event, the Order of Succession. So as Lithuania you begin the game with the favored son succession law, which is probably the best succession law that you can get as a monarchy, because not only does it default to the ruler, the son of the ruler with the highest abilities, but you also get to choose your own heir through the declare heir interaction. Also, let me move this child to our court. And by the order of succession, the event actually gives you an option to change your succession law to cognatic primogeniture, which I have no idea why anyone would prefer this over the favored son succession law, but technically you can choose this. Instead, we are going to say, our traditions have served us well, we will keep them because we definitely want to keep them. Now, the Black Death certainly did a number on our RGOs, because in every single location without fail we are out of laborers. It's probably going to take us a while for the economy to recover. In the meantime, I think it might be a better idea to just build up our urban industries, which employ far fewer burghers compared to RGO labor consumption, so it will be easier for the burghers to actually promote, especially in our urban locations. And I think I'm also going to purchase fleet basing rights from Venice, and later on Genoa too, so we get even more spread towards the institution that they have embraced. And in this case we have both the Renaissance and banking spreading to our country thanks to the fleet basing rights, and soon enough we should also get professional armies. In fact, Riga already has a decent amount of spread towards professional armies, so it will spread to our country naturally once it is present in the market center in Riga. I really think that scriptoriums are kinda underrated in the early game, because they employ clerics instead of burghers, and especially when you're just recovering from the Black Death, when your population has been decimated, employing more clerics instead of the burghers, which are already in short supply, is probably very much a good thing. Also, it looks like we can build a bunch of settlements, because the Black Death really did a number on our population, and we already begin with a rather low population compared to our capacity anyways, so I'll definitely consider building these bad boys up as well. We can hold our parliament now, but I'm going to wait for another 2 or 3 months, because we want the parliament to end after our truce with the Teutons has run out, so we can use the fabricate claims action to get claims on them, and by using that we will be able to attack them and reclaim the northern lands for the glory of the pagan faith. And now we can hold our parliament, so of course I'm going to hold it in Trakai, and let's go for one of these, because we will definitely use a lot of parliament support in this. Our truce with the Teutonic Order has run out, but the parliament is still in session, so I'm going to fabricate a claim on them, and let's go for Danzig this time around. And of course we're going to use the claims to immediately declare war on the Teutonic Order, and I might as well drag in Poland too, because they will definitely assist us. But you know what, if Poland comes in, they will most likely occupy these areas around Danzig for themselves, and not allow us to take any land, so we'll probably not call them in just yet. And looking at the military numbers, I really think that we should easily be able to beat the Teutons and their vassal swarm ourselves. And this is basically going to be the same as the first war. We will just destroy their armies when they come to us, and then they will all die, and hopefully the Teutons will unconditionally surrender. But unlike the first war, because the Teutonic quality advantage is over, they do not have any of their regulars anymore, they just have 45 auxiliaries, we can actually go on the offensive and destroy the Teutonic armies before they come to us, in which case it will be much easier for us to end the war. And would you look at that, in the Battle of Frauenburg, the Teutonic armies have all been wiped out, so now we're going to send half of our men back up north to deal with the Livonians, while the other half just stay busy in Western Prussia occupying Teutonic lands. Well, looks like we didn't even need to go north ourselves, because our vassals made quick work of the Livonian armies, and it appears that the Livonian Order has destroyed most of their forts in the time between the two wars, so we will only have to siege down the town of Dorpat, and all of the other forts have been destroyed. So at this point the war has basically devolved into us sieging down Danzig and Dorpat, and we have basically nothing else to do. So hopefully the Teutons will surrender, although I don't think that they're going to do that, seeing that the Duchy of Wolgast is still out there, so we will probably have to siege down their forts ourselves. And the Teutons have unconditionally surrendered to us, So of course we are going to do a peace with them. And we have two options on how to deal with the Teutons. We could either fully annex them, and that would allow us to inherit all of their vassals immediately, but of course the vassals would be Catholic and rather rebellious, or we could just take some of their lands in Latvia and then leave the vassals to the Second War. And you know what, I think I'm actually going to fully annex them. Because the Crusader order has been a real nuisance for us. They have converted our brethren at sword point, they have forced their will upon us, and that we cannot allow to pass. All of their lands will be ours, and their vassals will now become our vassals, and with this, the Grand Duchy of Lithuania is the one true ruler of the Baltic. It is the year 1357, and the Christians have lost, and the soldiers of the old gods are rising once more in the east of Europe. The Baltic Crusades are over, the Teutonic Order is a thing of history, and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania rises stronger than ever, more pagan than ever. And soon enough, we shall become the greatest power in Eastern Europe, all the while preserving the old ways, and all the while keeping the old gods. Now, to be fair, I do not actually intend to make a full series out of this. Maybe we might have another episode in which we invade Poland and try to form the Lithuanian-Polish Commonwealth, but I'm not quite sure what the exact requirements for that are, so we'll have to see about that. For now, thank you all for watching, and if you actually enjoyed the video, if you want me to turn this into a full series instead of like a one-shot, definitely let me know in the comments. And before we go, our usual well-deserved shout-out to our map painter friends and members: Dark vs Real, Miekyo123, Loghead, Monegas, Ganon Patton, Osvaldo Antonio Carmona Calde, Hunter Herring, BK321, Esteban David, Maychard, Kozma Jaskowiak, Melia Strada, Hagnat, Metal of Gangelt, Cambrian, Zwexter, Jason Johnson, Tev, Alperan Bayraktar, Marcus Koas, Mert Baba, Brian Brady, Marco Berdeo, Hum2713, and our darling dear wargamers Jacob Emrich and CH Dragoon. Thank you all for your contributions, friends, and thank you all, my dearest viewers, for keeping the war room alive for yet another day, and I will see you all once again in the war room.